In a remote village nestled among the mountains of the Middle East, a group of archaeologists conducted a routine expedition. Amidst the weathered rocks, a young researcher stumbled upon something extraordinary: an ancient wooden chest, sealed and adorned with archaic symbols. As the chest was carefully opened, a sense of awe and reverence overcame them all. Inside, wrapped in old linen cloths, lay a manuscript lost for millennia, known only in legends, the Lost Book of Adam and Eve. The pages, made of ancient parchment, were remarkably well preserved, as if an unknown force had shielded this treasure from the passage of centuries. Each leaf, written in a strange and enigmatic language, recounted stories long forgotten by time, tales now ready to come to light, poised to reveal hidden secrets from the dawn of humanity. News of the discovery spread like wildfire, reaching scholars, religious figures, and curious minds around the globe. All were eager to unravel the mysteries contained within that book. What could those ancient pages reveal about the lives of the first humans? What dark secrets lay hidden between the lines? Through translation and analysis of the text, it became clear that we were on the brink of delving into an ancient tale of temptation, tragedy, and the relentless pursuit of redemption. As scholars around the world received digitized copies of the manuscript, the first question that arose was its authenticity. Could this truly be the much discussed Lost Book of Adam and Eve, or was it merely an elaborate hoax? Experts in ancient linguistics, theology, and archaeology convened in conferences and laboratories, scrutinizing every detail of the manuscript. Carbon-14 tests were conducted on the parchment, revealing an age consistent with the early millennia of human civilization. The ink used for the inscriptions was analyzed, and its composition matched ancient writing practices. Even more intriguing were the symbols engraved on the cover and margins of the pages. They bore resemblance to those found on artifacts from ancient civilizations, yet with variations suggesting an even older and more mysterious origin. The calligraphy, intricate and beautiful, seemed beyond ordinary human capabilities, as if penned by a hand guided by something divine. As the experts tirelessly worked, debates flourished. Some believed the book could be one of the greatest discoveries in history, potentially rewriting our understanding of human origins. Others remained skeptical, cautioning about the possibility of manipulation or misinterpretation. Then, something unexpected occurred. During a night of study, one researcher examining the pages under ultraviolet light made a startling discovery: hidden inscriptions visible only under this special light. These inscriptions, in an even more ancient and nearly indecipherable language, appeared to contain an additional code or message. It was as if the manuscript held layers of secrets waiting to be unveiled. The authenticity of the Lost Book of Adam and Eve began to solidify, promising profound revelations about human nature and our most distant past. The world waited eagerly for what would come next, as scholars continued to decipher every word, every symbol, every fragment of wisdom contained within that ancient manuscript. With the discovery of the hidden inscriptions, the manuscript began to unveil its secrets one by one, like an onion being peeled layer by layer. Scholars were astonished by the level of detail and depth of the stories contained within its pages. The book was not merely a simple narrative, but a complex tapestry of events, emotions, and lessons. The first secrets revealed included detailed descriptions of the Garden of Eden, a paradise of unimaginable beauty where every plant and animal coexisted in perfect harmony. But beyond the idyllic landscape, the book also spoke of Adam and Eve's struggles and attempts to understand their purpose and the rules imposed by the Creator. In a particularly revealing passage, the manuscript described a profound dialogue between Adam and Eve shortly after their creation. They discussed the inherent curiosity of their human nature, a curiosity that led them to question and explore, but also to fear the consequences of their actions. As scholars translated more pages, they uncovered a detailed account of the serpent that persuaded Eve to eat from the forbidden fruit. Surprisingly, the serpent was portrayed in a more complex light than the traditional depiction of a mere deceiver. It possessed sharp intelligence, unmatched persuasive ability, and a profound understanding of human weaknesses. Furthermore, the book contained descriptions of rituals and practices that Adam and Eve adopted after their expulsion from Eden in an attempt to reconcile with God. These rituals, involving sacrifices and prayers, were driven by a desperate desire to return to the state of grace they had once known. But the secrets did not end there. In a hidden passage, there were mentions of celestial beings observing humanity's fall with a mix of sadness and hope. These beings, whose identities remained ambiguous, seemed to play a veiled role in history, influencing in subtle and mysterious ways. Each new revelation left scholars more intrigued and viewers around the world more fascinated. The lost book of Adam and Eve was becoming not just a window to the past, but also a mirror to the human condition, reflecting our weaknesses, our quests, and our deepest hopes. At the heart of the manuscript lay a vivid and detailed account of Satan's temptation, the catalytic event of Adam and Eve's fall. Unlike the simplified stories told over the centuries, the book depicted the temptation as a meticulously plotted scheme by Satan, who patiently observed, studying every move and thought of Adam and Eve. Satan, disguised as a mesmerizingly beautiful serpent, approached Eve when she was alone, contemplating the majestic tree of knowledge. The serpent's words were sweet and persuasive, its promises irresistible. It spoke not only of wisdom, but of power, equality with the gods, a complete and profaning of the universe and themselves. Satan insinuated that God was withholding something precious from them, something that would make them whole and truly free. Eve, captivated by the promise of knowledge and seduced by the curiosity burning within her, hesitated. But the serpent persisted, its words piercing deep, stirring Eve's deepest fears and desires. She took the fruit, its surface gleaming and fragrant, and took a bite. At first, everything seemed the same, but then a whirlwind of emotions and thoughts flooded her mind. She felt a new awareness, an awakening she had never experienced before. She hurried to Adam, sharing with him both the fruit and the serpent's promises. Adam, moved by love for Eve and the desire to share this new experience with her, also ate of the fruit. Immediately, both felt a profound and irrevocable change. Their eyes opened to a new reality, and with this vision came the awareness of shame, vulnerability, and separation from God. From that moment, the atmosphere of Eden changed. The celestial glow that once surrounded them began to fade, replaced by a shadow of guilt and fear. They hid among the trees, trying to cover their newly discovered nakedness, awaiting the inevitable confrontation with the Creator. When God called them, his voice thundered, filled with sadness and disappointment. The confrontation was painful. Adam and Eve, in their shame, tried to justify themselves, but their excuses only confirmed the depth of their transgression. The judgment was severe: expulsion from Eden, loss of immortality, and the introduction of suffering and death into the world. But the manuscript revealed something even darker, a glimpse into Satan's thoughts. He not only wanted to destroy Adam and Eve's innocence, he desired to plunge humanity into an endless cycle of pain and redemption, an eternal struggle against their own natures. He knew that this initial fall was just the beginning of a cosmic conflict, a divine chess game that would continue through the generations. This part of the manuscript made it clear that Satan's temptation was more than a simple act of disobedience. It was a declaration of war against the divine plan, a direct challenge to the Creator, echoing through human history. With the fall of Adam and Eve, the Garden of Eden, once a paradise of unparalleled beauty and harmony, began to change. The manuscript vividly described how the transformation was swift and devastating. The vibrant colors of flowers and trees started to fade. The air, once perfumed and invigorating, became heavy and melancholic. Animals, who once lived peacefully, began to show signs of distrust and aggression. The manuscript painted a detailed picture of Eden before the fall. There, crystal-clear rivers flowed gently, nourishing all forms of life. Exotic fruits and plants grew abundantly, offering sustenance effortlessly. The sun shone with gentle warmth, and a soft golden light permeated every corner of the garden. Adam and Eve lived in perfect harmony with nature and God, enjoying constant and intimate communion with the Creator. However, with the transgression, this idyllic scene began to disintegrate. The manuscript recounted that a cloud of sadness seemed to spread over the garden. Fruit-bearing trees began to wither, and the once fertile soil hardened. Adam and Eve felt a change not only around them, but within themselves. Where there had been peace and contentment, now there was restlessness and pain. God, in his mercy, still appeared before them, but the relationship had irreversibly changed. With sadness in his eyes, God pronounced his judgment. Adam would toil the land for sustenance, and Eve would face pains in childbirth and a new power dynamic in her relationship with Adam. Both were clothed in garments made of animal skins, a constant reminder of their newfound mortality and loss of innocence. Eden was then sealed. Angels with flaming swords were placed at the entrance, preventing any attempt to return. Paradise was lost, not just as a physical place, but as a state of being. Humanity now faced a world of challenges, where each day would be a struggle for survival and the quest for redemption. The manuscript's final descriptions of Eden were particularly poignant. They spoke of a garden that continued to exist but was veiled and inaccessible, a constant reminder of what had been and what could have been. A lost paradise, yes, but also an eternal hope, for even in its fall, there was a veiled promise of future redemption. This part of the manuscript not only narrated the loss, but also sparked deep reflection on what it means to be in communion with the divine and the consequences of breaking that relationship. It was a call to humanity to seek, despite everything, reconciliation and restoration of what was lost. The manuscript continued with a poignant description of Adam and Eve's first night outside the Garden of Eden. The abrupt change of environment was a shock to both of them. Accustomed to the protection and abundance of Eden, they now found themselves in a hostile and unknown world. Night fell quickly, bringing with it a biting cold and oppressive silence. Adam and Eve, without the comfort and security of Eden, sought shelter under a solitary tree. They no longer had the gentle, welcoming glow of the garden. Instead, darkness seemed to envelop them like a cloak of despair. As they sat together, trembling from the cold, they began to feel the first signs of hunger, something they had never experienced before. The manuscript detailed the growing desperation in their hearts. They had no knowledge of how to find or prepare food, and the idea of hunting or gathering was completely foreign to them. Adam, feeling the responsibility to protect and sustain Eve, began to search for something edible. The night was filled with strange and threatening sounds, and every movement in the shadows seemed to hide danger. After an agonizing search, he found some wild fruits. Though they were bitter and tough, they ate gratefully, aware that they would have to learn to survive in this new world. The narrative also revealed the emotional pain of Adam and Eve. They wept together for the loss of their perfect home and the closeness they had with God. Guilt and shame weighed heavily on their hearts as they tried to process the consequences of their actions. They felt a deep separation, not only from Eden but also from each other, as the trust and innocence they once shared had been tainted by disobedience. At dawn, Adam and Eve rose to face a new day, carrying with them the uncertainty of the future. The manuscript described how, despite everything, there was a spark of determination in their eyes. They knew that, though they had been expelled from paradise, they still had each other, and the hope that somehow they could find a way back to divine grace. In the following pages, the manuscript began to explore Adam and Eve's first attempts to establish a new life. They began to learn about cultivation, shelter building, and crafting rudimentary tools. Each discovery, each small success, was a step toward adapting to their new world, even though the longing for Eden never completely faded away. The painful exile was not just a physical journey, but a spiritual and emotional passage. Adam and Eve were beginning to grasp the depth of their loss, but they were also discovering the resilience and inherent adaptability of human nature. The road ahead would be arduous and full of challenges, but in their hearts, a small flame of hope continued to shine. As Adam and Eve adapted to their new life outside of Eden, they were blessed with children. First came Cain and then Abel. The manuscript vividly described the joy and hope that these new lives brought to Adam and Eve. They saw in their children a chance for redemption, a possibility to rebuild what they had lost. Cain and Abel grew up in a world vastly different from Eden, yet their lives were deeply marked by stories they heard about the lost paradise. Adam and Eve taught them about God and the importance of living a righteous life. Cain, as the firstborn, took on the responsibility of tilling the land, while Abel became a shepherd. Both were dedicated in their work and offered sacrifices to God in gratitude for his blessings. The manuscript narrated the first great tragedy to befall humanity. Despite his effort and dedication, Cain began to feel envy towards the favor God seemed to show Abel. Abel, with his pure heart and sincere offerings, pleased God more, filling Cain with resentment and bitterness. The competition between the brothers, fueled by insecurity and the desire for approval, grew silently. One night, while everyone slept, Cain was visited by a disturbing dream. He saw Abel shining with celestial light, while he himself was engulfed in shadows. The voice of Satan whispered in his ears, feeding his envy and urging him to take drastic action. Cain woke up sweating, his heart filled with anger and confusion. The next day, Cain invited Abel to go out into the field. The manuscript described the tension in the air as the brothers walked side by side. Abel, unaware of Cain's internal turmoil, spoke enthusiastically about future harvests and new lambs. Cain, however, was lost in his dark thoughts. Suddenly, in an uncontrollable fit of rage, Cain attacked Abel. The manuscript detailed the horror of that moment. Abel's scream echoing across the field, the look of shock and betrayal in his eyes as he fell to the ground. Cain, breathing heavily, looked at his brother's body and felt a wave of regret and fear. Abel's blood stained the earth, and God, in his sorrow, called out to Cain. "Where is Abel, your brother?" the Lord asked. Trembling, Cain replied, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" But God knew the truth. The manuscript described the pain in God's heart as he heard the cry of Abel's blood demanding justice. As punishment, Cain was condemned to wander the earth, always fleeing and fearing attack. He was marked by God, a sign so that no one would kill him, but also so that all would know of his transgression. Cain became a symbol of human frailty, of how easily the heart can be corrupted by envy and hatred. Upon learning of Abel's death and Cain's fate, Adam and Eve felt a pain that seemed even deeper than their expulsion from Eden. The loss of one son and the downfall of the other were burdens almost unbearable. But even amidst tragedy, the manuscript hinted at a lesson: the need for constant vigilance against temptations that lead to destruction, and the importance of repentance and seeking reconciliation. This story of shattered brotherhood and its repercussions echoed through the generations, a constant reminder of the complexities and inherent dangers of the human condition. After Abel's murder and Cain's flight, the manuscript revealed the profound despair that overtook Adam and Eve. They found themselves alone again, haunted by memories of their sons and the unfolding tragedies. The manuscript described how each day was a struggle to find meaning and hope in a world that seemed to have lost all its light. Adam, once filled with determination to build a new life, now found himself tormented by doubts and guilt. He incessantly questioned where he had failed as a father and protector. The pain of losing Abel, combined with sorrow for Cain's fate, weighed heavily on his shoulders like an unbearable burden. He spent hours wandering through the fields, seeking answers in the heavens and on earth, but finding only silence. Eve, meanwhile, was immersed in profound sadness. She constantly relived the happy moments with Abel and Cain, feeling that each memory was a knife in her heart. She withdrew to a place of silent mourning, where she spent her days crying and praying for a sign from God, an indication that there was still hope for their family. The manuscript recounted a particularly dark night when Eve had a vivid dream. She saw Abel in a field of light, surrounded by angels, smiling at her. He did not speak, but his gaze conveyed a message of peace and forgiveness. Upon waking, Eve felt a small flame of hope in her heart. She shared the dream with Adam, and together they decided that despite everything, they must continue living and honor the memory of their sons through acts of kindness and perseverance. Over time, Adam and Eve's faith began to renew. They turned to God with greater fervor, seeking solace in prayers and the promise of redemption. The manuscript described how they began working together to rebuild their lives, focusing on creating a new home and cultivating the land. Every plant that grew, every fruit harvested, was a symbol of their resilience and determination not to let despair destroy them. Eventually, Eve conceived again. The birth of Seth brought new hope to Adam and Eve. They saw in him an opportunity to start anew, a chance to raise a generation that could somehow redeem the failures of the past. Seth grew up hearing the stories of his brothers and the importance of living a righteous life in communion with God. Seth's arrival marked a new chapter in Adam and Eve's life. The manuscript detailed how they dedicated themselves to teaching him and his descendants the values of love, faith, and perseverance. They still bore the scars of the past, but found strength in their unity and renewed faith. This part of the manuscript showed that, despite adversities, the human spirit has an incredible ability to find hope and meaning even in the darkest moments. Adam and Eve, despite their falls and losses, continued to struggle, demonstrating that the quest for redemption and light is an eternal path, full of challenges, but also opportunities for renewal and growth. With the birth of Seth, hope began to bloom again in Adam and Eve's lives. They dedicated themselves to raising and educating Seth based on the principles of faith, love, and justice they had learned, often through hardship. The manuscript revealed how Seth grew up as a young man of great virtue, deeply aware of his parents' legacy and the weight of responsibility he carried. Like his father, Seth became a diligent worker of the land, yet he also possessed a spiritual wisdom that seemed to transcend his age. He frequently withdrew to meditate and pray, seeking a profound connection with God. His moments of contemplation brought a peace that spread to everyone around him. The community in which they lived began to thrive again, inspired by Seth's example. As Seth grew, he married and had children, and the manuscript began to narrate the story of his descendants. These sons and grandsons inherited Seth's devotion and wisdom. Among them, Enosh stood out, who, according to the manuscript, was the first to publicly call upon the name of the Lord, formally establishing worship and devotion to God among men. The manuscript described that during Enosh's time, there was a significant spiritual revival. People began to gather regularly to pray, share their faith experiences, and seek divine guidance. There was an atmosphere of renewal, a sense that, despite failures and exile, humanity still had purpose and a connection to the divine. This period of ascent was marked by many significant events. One of the most notable moments was the construction of a stone altar, where sacrifices and offerings were made in honor of God. This altar was not just a place of worship, but a symbol of reconciliation and the ongoing quest for redemption. The manuscript described how the altar glowed with a soft light during ceremonies, believed to be a sign of God's presence and favor. Seth's descendants also excelled in other areas. They were known for their skills in arts and sciences, developing advanced techniques in agriculture, construction, and music. There was a sense of progress, a movement toward a more prosperous and spiritual future. However, the manuscript did not overlook the challenges they still faced. While there was a spiritual revival among Seth's descendants, they still lived in a world marked by the fall and sin. Internal and external conflicts arose, testing their faith and determination. The story recounted in the manuscript showed that the rise of Seth's descendants was not just a period of prosperity, but also a phase of testing and strengthening. They constantly needed to choose the path of righteousness and communion with God, facing the temptations and difficulties that the world presented to them. This part of the manuscript underscored the importance of perseverance and steadfast faith. Seth's descendants, by building their lives around solid principles and seeking God's presence in all they did, left a lasting legacy of hope and redemption. Their story demonstrated that even after the fall, humanity still had the capacity to rise, seek truth, and find a path back to divine grace. As Seth's descendants prospered and faced their challenges, the story continued to unfold with the underlying promise of redemption. Years passed, bringing changes and new trials to the community that had grown around the teachings and faith passed down from Adam and Eve. As time advanced, the early days of humanity's history became a legend passed from generation to generation. The manuscript, with its aged pages, contained not only accounts of heroic deeds and cultural achievements, but also profound lessons learned through pain and perseverance. Through the ages, Seth's descendants encountered periods of expansion and contradiction. They witnessed the rise and fall of kingdoms and civilizations, and continued to struggle against the impulses that led to separation from God in the early days. Yet, the stone altar erected by their ancestors remained a lasting symbol of hope and commitment to the divine. The early days' history, with its moments of glory and tragedy, also served as a constant reminder of human frailty and the ongoing quest for redemption. Seth's descendants sought to live lives of justice and compassion, learning from past mistakes and seeking reconciliation with God and each other. In the manuscript's final chapters, a prominent prophecy stood out: the promise of a Redeemer. It was a hope that transcended the boundaries of time and human history. The prophecy spoke of a Messiah who would come to restore the lost communion between God and humanity, to forgive sins, and to bring a new kingdom of peace and justice. The story concluded with a note, expectation, and faith. Throughout the ages, Seth's descendants kept the flame of hope alive in the promise of the Redeemer. They continued to worship God, seek truth, and live according to the principles of love and justice taught by their ancestors. The now complete manuscript was not just a chronicle of a distant past, but a testament to humanity's spiritual journey. It was a story of fall and redemption, of pain and hope, of struggle and perseverance. The final message echoed through the pages that even in the darkest times, God's light never completely fades, and the promise of redemption is always within reach for those who sincerely seek it. Thus, the story of humanity's early days, as recorded in the ancient manuscript, did not end with a conclusion, but with a continuation in faith that one day all things would be restored and renewed by divine grace.